Oh, that makes it easier.
Well, why don't I go ahead and just call the meeting to order then? And we'd like to start the roll call, please.
All right, Tom Dester.
Here.
Scott Holick.
Here.
Roger Lang.
Here.
Renee Davis.
Here.
Ken Houston.
Here.
Wes Lowry.
Here.
Kevin Bowden.
Here.
Hope Bartlett.
Here.
Alex Merkline.
Here.
Heather McIntyre is here, and Councilmember Christ is with us as a guest today. Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. So our first order of business today will be the election of officers. So I'm going to open up the floor for nominations for the chairperson for the Longmont Water Board.
I would nominate Mr. Lang to serve as the chair this year.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Roger, are you interested in that position again? Before I
I
close?
will, no. Yes, I will.
Okay. All right, then
We
I'll
need a second.
need a second. Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor of Roger being the chairperson for the upcoming 12 months for Longmont Water Board, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, hearing no opposition. Roger, I'm going to turn the floor over to you for the nomination of vice chair.
Thanks, Wes. Your term was short-lived, wasn't it?
60 seconds.
But it's going on there.
You did a great job.
Great chair.
Okay. Well, following his lead, I'd like to open a nomination for vice chair of the board. Are there any nominations for that position?
I'd like to nominate Scott.
I would accept, but only tepidly.
I mean tepidly. Is it yes or no, Scott?
I said I would accept, yes.
Okay.
I was just adding something.
I mean, I will resoundingly second that. To add a little enthusiasm. for the
Yeah,
next
thank you for
year.
your
Yeah,
enthusiasm.
I thought maybe.
Okay, Scott's been nominated and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Congratulations, Scott, and welcome back.
Well, thank you.
You're gonna be with us for a while?
On the sheet here, it says 2029, which seems like a really long way away. I can't even fathom
It's
2029.
really not, though.
Yeah.
It moves pretty quickly. Well,
Is-
congratulations, Scott.
Okay, did I miss something? That was because
My term
His term-
ended.
your term
First term
ended.
ended.
And had we been here in July, I would not have been here in July because the council, I don't think, had me ready for
Right.
July. So
Okay,
I
but,
think that was the point.
but you were rehired.
I was reappointed
Reappointed into the
by council.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to item 4, approval of previous month's minutes. Any questions or comments about our previous meeting? You know, I'd like to make a comment. Scott, did you get a chance to go through those minutes very closely?
I did, but I'm not going to vote on them because I wasn't here. But I did get to it through.
I'm not going to ask you to vote on them. Did you understand them?
Yeah. Yeah. I actually had a conversation, I think, with somebody. Heather and I
On
talked about
cash and lieu, what we did with cash and
Yep.
lieu, I thought was a good piece of work. Finally decided when we're gonna do it, how we're gonna, you know, so I was happy to see that go forward, so, okay, good. So, can I get an approval for the last meeting we had? Anybody wanna
I would
approve the minutes?
I'd like to approve the minutes from, what was the date?
June 17th.
June 17th, sorry.
Is there a second?
Issue here.
Second.
All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Heather, just for the record, I abstained for those.
Yep.
Okay. Kevin, the water status report.
Yeah.
Is that you way down there?
Yeah, that's me down there.
All right.
It'd be weird being on this side.
Glare at them, I always do.
You're one of us now, Kevin.
Yeah, there's been a few changes since the last time we got together. Currently, the gauge at Lyons is running at 77 CFS. The 125-year historic average for this date is 114 CFS. The call on the St. Vrain River is the James Ditch, which has a priority date of 1868, And the call on the main stem of the South Platte is Bijou Canal, and that's a 1888 priority date. Ralph Price Reservoir at Button Rock Preserve is full and spilling, and Union Reservoir is currently at a gauge height of 26 feet or 11,327 acre feet, which is down about 1,400 acre feet from full. Select St. Vrain reservoirs at the end of July were at 81% of full. The same time last year, our reservoirs were at 85.2% full. So the reservoirs are a little bit lower than they were last year, so at this time. But I think this next month, we'll see a lot of our reservoirs going down quite a bit because it rained pretty hard during that hot spell. So.
Any questions for Kevin?
One other point is the Northern Water issued an additional 10% quota last Wednesday at a special water board meeting, so a special Northern Board meeting.
Yeah.
So they did a supplemental.
So what happens when, I mean, that's water that you weren't planning on necessarily, so like, do we have a place to put it, or do you, how does that water?
Yeah, we do. Fortunately, it has, because it's been a little bit warmer, it affords us the opportunity to rent some additional water out for some of our farms that we own and we lease out. But kind of now, as part of the reservoirs being down, Clover Basin was down because it was down for some repair on its dam, and that repairs have been made. And so we'll probably put some of the CBT in Clover Basin so we can help use it to irrigate through Dry Creek and some of the parks on Dry Creek. So the timing is actually pretty good.
Cool.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Any public invited to be heard? Yes? No? Right.
Just a quick question on CBT quota. Is that atypical?
It's about every 2 years or so,
They do a
they'll
supplemental?
issue a supplemental quota.
Okay.
They have it, you can kind of go through and get the history, which is pretty neat, see that history.
Okay.
Yeah, so earlier in the project, they would issue a quota once, and that was it.
Right.
And then starting about early 2000s, they started doing their initial quota in November, and then doing their supplemental quota after the spring water users meeting, took input from all the constituents.
Okay.
And then I think here in about the last 10 years, they've done an additional, we might think it was a second quota, I think 4 times, something like that, so not unprecedented.
Okay. It feels really novel to me, but
It's
There
not
must
very
be-
often though, when you think of it as being, they're issuing of quotas since the beginning in the 1960s.
okay.
It's a little unusual this year how late it is.
So
I can't think going,
I think there was only one other time that way back that they've done it this late.
Okay, maybe that's my perception.
That's probably what you're feeling.
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Was the water use asking for it? Was it down? Or, I mean, how did they happen to come?
I think there was a pretty good request from some of the ag users asking the board to reevaluate.
Oh.
I'm thinking
Okay.
kind of the analogy that they got to be able to make it through this year even to get to next year. And
Yeah.
so there was a big need from the ag community, and the board listened to that.
Okay. Yes, Scott?
If you, I don't think we have it in our packet, but if you look at the drought monitor right now, the extreme drought in the entire state, which is very unusual over the last, I don't know, dozen years or so, is right centered on Boulder and Larimer County and along the foothills towards I-25. So really, part of that was to address finishing crops for farmers who have crops in the ground,
Yeah.
but, you know, ditches are dry. These 1860 calls have been all summer, frankly, on Boulder Creek, Left-Hand Creek, St. Vrain Creek, so.
Yeah.
We're the hot spot this year, literally, and the dry spot, so it's a big part of Northern's western side of its region, so it makes some sense.
That's good it was available, or they were willing to make it available, so.
They're-
It's been a
they're pretty healthy.
strange,
Yeah.
we just haven't had much coming over to us, so. Okay. Any agenda revisions?
I have none.
Okay. All right. Development activity. Item 88, 8902 Quail annexation.
Yeah, so, and you're included in your board packet was one development activity for the board to act on, 8902 Quail Road annexation. Approximately a 17.34 acre annexation located north of Clover Basin Drive and east of Airport Road. Historic water rights consists of one share of Clover Basin Reservoir. There's a typo, it's actually 1/2 share of James. The numbers were accurate, but we have written in your packet that it was 3/4, and it's actually 1/2 share of James. So the full 17.34 acres are subject to the full requirements of the raw water requirement policy. 18902 Quail Road annexation will be in compliance with the annexation requirements of the city's raw water requirement policy upon transfer of all historical water rights at time of annexation and the satisfaction of the 26.74 acre foot deficit time of final plat approval. This area is zoned for residential mixed use. There's, I think, currently 4 lots as part of this with 3 different owners. The concept plan proposes units with up to 18 dwelling units per acre, so 2 and 3 story units. So it could be up to around 300 units in total. And that'll come through when they go through with plating. This is just at the annexation level now.
Now, is there some commercial in this area at all?
No, to the east, towards Holbert area there is, but that's it. I think that's the closest commercial.
Somehow I thought,
There is,
Ziggy.
there's a little strip mall right there at
South Bend.
Clover, or Airport and something.
Yeah, up by Nelson Road on the far left end. There's some up by.
When
No,
you
there's
south
a-
there,
there's a
you got
new
that
one.
Malt Brewers down there.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a
The bearded brewer.
The
Brewer, brewer thing,
Okay.
or whatever, all that.
So I guess there might be
It's a
some.
little bit, not a lot.
It's just a tiny, it's next to that
Somerset
giant,
Meadows.
yeah,
Or
apartment
Somerset.
complex.
how many units did you say?
So the comp plan proposed up to 18 units per acre.
And what are they saying they're going to have? Or have they stated what? We don't know.
They haven't said, that'll come through after annexation. It's just generally described that they're proposing up to 18 units per acre, which is not uncommon within
Yeah.
annexation.
Any other questions about this? Anybody want to make a motion to move forward with it?
I'd make that motion, Roger, to move forward with that for city council's review.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Moving second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Tom, did you say aye?
I did.
Okay. General business. Item 10A, Full Stone Canyon Fire Report. Alex, are you gonna
Yes.
give us a little information on this?
Yeah. So overall, sorry. Sorry, I don't know, doing this all the time.
That's right.
Sorry. So we had 1,570 acres. That was all that got burned. We are now 100% containment now. All the evacuations have been lifted. Appears to be of lower severity and intensity around this area. Not entirely certain what the cause of the fire was, but the involvement of ATF indicates that it's likely human cause. Kevin and I went out there and took some pictures of the area, kind of saw what was going on out there. Compared to Cameron Peak fire, as I saw when I was in college. It's a lot less severe of a fire out there. Vegetation wasn't as heavily impacted. As we can see out here, they did pretty well the job at protecting some houses, but unfortunately 5 houses still burned and 1 individual was killed, uncertain exactly how. They're still investigating that. Here's another fire we took while out there. Some of the issues the city were involved in during the fire, we had a problem with fire retardant making its way into the St. Vrain Supply Canal, which the water treatment plant draws from. The city got in contact with Northern Water to shut down the canal, and with loss of that water supply, we then ended up shifting towards using the Carter Lake connecting pipeline and the Highland ditch as our main sources of water. Another issue we had with kind of post-fire was the sediment and debris flows, including ash flows as well. Our issues with that and concerns was the contamination from rain events that could possibly occur. The National Weather Service has a model in which they can predict kind of what flows would cause issues for us, and they found that about 1 to 1.5 inches of rain would be the trigger for some of these large flows. The concern, given an event such as this, would be whether it would overwhelm the infrastructure down there and cause issues for containment in the St. Vrain as well as the St. Vrain Supply Canal. Here's an image of the drainage basin for Stone Canyon. As that kind of shows, you can kind of see a significant portion of it was burned in the fire, and so issues with that would be, runoff from significant rain events, but again, a 1 to 1.5 inch rain event would be quite a lot of water. And so, no, okay.
Just to make sure I'm visualizing it properly, the real concern is runoff getting in the St. Vrain supply ditch, or is there runoff concerns in the valley?
So both.
Both?
Yeah,
Okay.
both.
All right.
And so Stone, for precipitation event of 1 to 1.5 inches would generate about 80 to 100 CFS worth of water, which is quite a bit of water. But Lyons owns and maintains a detention pond towards the mouth of the canyon. And the pond, which is upstream from the St. Vrain Supply Canal. So if we were to get flows, we have reviewed and seen that the detention pond would be enough to limit how much contamination would occur in the St. Vrain Supply Canal or get to the St. Vrain Creek. And in the instance where we were to get debris flows, which would block up water, there's a constructed weir over the St. Vrain Supply Canal, which would, kind of re-divert all that water away from St. Vrain Creek as well as the canal. And here's just an overview of the entire area down there and kind of showing where our water treatment plant is in regards to the fire as well as the St. Vrain Supply Canal and the city's turnout. And then here's an image I got together, just kind of showing the burn scar that's been left over. The image on the right is enhanced to kind of show vegetation, and in this instance, the lack of vegetation because of the fire. And so the city is going to be coordinating with Northern Water into the future, given that it is their infrastructure that can be impacted by this. The initial assessment from Northern Water found the fire to be of lower intensity and was made up mostly of back burns, which is essentially where firefighters try and do smaller controlled burns to limit the amount of fuel for the fire in its path. One thing about the St. Vrain Supply Canal is there's very little drainage into it, which is protected by an upgradient drainage system, which limits how much sediment and flow can come into it from the hill. Here are some photos from Northern Water near the St. Vrain Supply Canal. And then here's also an image showing Alexander Mountain Fire and the Stone Canyon Fire, just to kind of show you that ultimately we're, in what way you can say, lucky with this fire. It was nothing incredibly severe or, widespread. And so, last thing I'll say, Northern Water said they will continue to monitor flows at the St. Vrain Supply Canal trash rack, which is located right before the city's turnout. And so that'll be very, very good to have their input on what kind of quality water we're getting through there. If we're getting, a lot of sediment coming through there. And similarly, the water treatment plant is also going to be continuing to test for total suspended solids to see if we're pulling in any water that's contaminated, but it's looking good.
Who was involved in fighting the fire? Several jurisdictions, or?
I don't know entirely. I would imagine Lyons was very involved, but other than that, I don't know.
We were a little lucky in that most of the slurry bombers fly out of Broomfield to Jeffco Airport, run, way up to Alexander Mountain Fire. Some of them started and dropped some loads.
Oh, really?
So not all of, they didn't take them all, but they kind of split between the two fires, and that helped a lot.
Oh, yeah.
That
I didn't know that.
you had the fire permit. They also pulled some of the firefighters off of the Alexander Mountain Fire. They really, Larimer County Office of Emergency Management was managing the Alexander Mountain Fire until the U.S. Forest Service took over. It usually takes U.S. Forest Service a couple days to come in on a major fire that's on U.S. Forest Service land, and so the initial response is your local firefighters, but then the Forest Service takes over. Once they took over command of that, then Larimer County coordinated assets between the two fires, and not that we were lucky that there was wish Alexander fire hadn't happened, but because we were lucky in that it was close by, and assets for both fires were shared and coordinated by Larimer County Office of Emergency Management. And so, no disrespect, but Lyons Fire and Hygiene Fire are not big enough to take on that kind of a fire.
Yeah. I tell you, there's a lot of slurry bomber traffic
There was.
going on. I'm telling you, I was impressed by how many were flying around. Well, that's good. I realize that, yeah.
An anecdote and a question. If you want to see a really cool picture, relatively, St. Vrain Left Hand was doing a tour with state ag officials that day, and they were up against the backdrop where the first pictures they had showed the Alexander Dawson plume north of the site, and then after a while you saw a second plume right behind the hill that they were in front of, which was the stone quarry fire beginning. So they were there live, real time, taking still photos that you can actually see differentiation of both plumes. That was the anecdote. I think that at least some of the fire activity was, they used reservoir water too. Did that happen? I think it happened in Lyons, didn't it? Weren't they dropping some reservoir water? I was just curious if they were, where that water came from, if it was anything within Longmont's service area, any of Longmont's reservoirs or not.
I haven't heard on that.
Yeah.
Well, some of the helicopters dipped. I don't
There was some dipping, and I just don't know if it was specific to Lyons or if it was only Alexander Dawson, which is a bigger fire, but there was definitely some, because there's some statutory provisions that allow for that, depending on how the counties have set that up. And I didn't know what our position is as a city or municipality participating in allowing water to be, well, not allowing it, but knowing that water is going to be taken out of, say, Button Rock and dropped on fires, right?
Every April, we let the guard train at Button Rock.
Yeah.
So they pull out of Button Rock then. And we have a long-standing agreement with the U.S. Forest Service that allows them to dip out of Longmont's reservoirs. On the Calwood fire, they actually preferred to dip, because it was closer, dip out of foothills, and they got permission, and the Highland Ditch Company allowed them to dip out of foothills. Probably that's why, if they dipped, it would have probably been foothills, closest to Stone Canyon.
Yeah, possibly true. I didn't know the answer, I just thought you guys might know.
Yeah, it just would have been a lot more effort to dip out of Button Rock because of the canyons you gotta fly over.
Well, probably also the way the flume was coming too at the time.
Yeah.
That would be difficult to flying those.
So, it was-
Cool, thanks.
Any other questions for Alex? Thanks, Alex.
No problem.
Okay, 10B, Water Conservation Program update. Oh,
Yeah, I just have a quick verbal update. You guys may have seen in the Colorado Sun this morning that the article about Denver Water's peak demands, and you know, that Monday morning time slot, we're seeing similar trends. And so that's just, I actually had a meeting this morning about trying to do an educational campaign next year to try and get folks to change their, like the article said, we think that irrigation clocks come preset Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and people just leave them on those days. So doing an education campaign about how to shade the peak and why that's important, and then getting folks to switch their clocks occasionally. So that's one big project, but that will be, it's very, you know, in the inception phase, so coming next year. But everything else is going really well. Our code evaluation and recommendations report that came out early this year, we're still working on that. We've gotten some snags. We're hoping to get to council by the end of the year. We were hoping to do it this summer, but things happen. So we're hoping to go to council for direction to update our code and design standards for water efficiency for new and redevelopment on mostly landscape. And this will be, we were gonna do it anyways, but it's also a good reaction to the Senate Bill 05 that just passed this year, banning non-functional turf on commercial, institutional, and industrial spaces. So that will be in there as well, and then we'll get ahead of that curve when we're meant to react on January 2026, and we're hoping to implement something in 2025.
the language of the Senate bill was what, banning what?
Banning non-functional turf on commercial, industrial, institutional spaces.
New development, right? Not.
Yeah, new development. New and
Oh, is
redevelopment.
redevelopment too?
I believe, yeah. Ours will be new and redevelopment. And then the first draft of our water efficiency plan update has come to me internally, so we're also hoping to launch that for public review next month. So we should have something to you all for some review as well sometime soon for our efficiency plan. And then, yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, questions for, yeah, Scott?
I have a question. I don't know if it's probably not directed to you, Hope, but I was at Lafayette Water District Board, and they have a obligation, as I suspect Longmont will have, on lead and copper plan to turn in, and I didn't know if, I've never really heard us talk about the pipe infrastructure in Longmont and what our federal government obligations are for reporting how much of that needs to be looked at, eventually replaced and funded, right?
Yeah, so we've got that very, the same requirements that everybody does. We have been doing a pretty extensive look at what our materials are. We've hired a contractor, I'm gonna say within the last 6 to 8 months has been actually going out and digging up a few of the older ones to see what they are, since unfortunately, and I think that contract's well along. And yeah, eventually we do have to get rid of them. Luckily, Longmont, I'll say, is in probably better shape than a lot of communities, partially because Longmont's a little bit newer community, and so it doesn't have as many older service lines. I mean, not to say we don't have a lot of them, but you know, Longmont really grew up, so to speak, in the late 60s, the 70s, and 80s, and 90s. And so the newer you get, the less you have problems with I don't know, Chris, is there any more?
Just to add to what you said just a little bit, so the city put together a pretty extensive program, worked with CDPHE on that. We were able to work out with them that 350 to 360 tests would be a representative sample for the city. And so those are all complete at this point in time. And that report is getting ready to be put out. There will be a presentation to council as well, but right now we're saying that we are lead-free of service lines at this point.
Excuse me, you were saying what now?
That we've tested about 350 service lines throughout the city that were randomly selected. And with our anecdotal information, our permitting information, we can now say, in accordance with CDPHE, that we're a lead-free community at this point.
So, can you define service lines just for me? So is that's piped from main to house, or no?
Yes.
Because that would have been that would have been the big problem with lead, of course.
Yes. Yeah.
And we didn't. And does that suggest that we never had a lead pipe in the ground?
No, it does not. So
What does that suggest then?
I don't want to preempt any
Oh, sure,
other.
of course. Yeah, I don't want
I'm not sure how much you want to say on the
I'm
record.
sorry, yeah.
I was just curious about the.
So let's say that we do get lead-free designation. What does that mean? Maybe that's the question.
That means
Or
that
ambiguous.
at this point, we do not have any record of lead service lines to any residence or commercial properties. Not to say that we haven't had them in the past, but at this point in time, we do not have any current lead
That'd be
service
a
lines.
miracle.
You know, along that line, communities are being looked at, the water quality per se. It sounded from what I've heard, and help me with this, I don't think we have any infractions in that area, do we, as far as our water quality?
Not that I'm aware of. The state is starting to do testing in schools and also randomly inside of homes because there still is lead and solder in copper pipes. So you can still get indications of lead. But our service lines from our mains, right now we can say that they are not, we have no lead in those at this point in time.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Cool. All right, anything
Sorry, hold on the
else?
table there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ken, I guess you're up on Windy Gap, right?
Yeah, just, I've got a short presentation here for the construction update on the Windy Gap. I kind of plagiarized Northern's presentation we get once a month from them. This is actually a photo just from a couple hours ago today. One of the things is nice to note, if you look, the crest of the dam is consistent all the way to the west side. You may recall a couple months ago we talked about there was a dip, there was a low point on the west side of the dam that had to be brought up to the same elevation so that you could bring the entire dam up. They actually had to stop work on the crest of the dam until they could fill in that low valley point. And as you look now, that's filled in, and they're now doing lifts from one side of the dam to the other. So I don't know that when the dam's finished, it's about 3,000 linear feet. So and they got 2,500 or so linear feet on the top of the dam. Big long runs, you know. So it's not as wide a dam, but the length of the crest is getting pretty significant. But still going well. We talked a little bit about the fires. The Alexander Mountain fire was, of course, just maybe 5, 6, 7 miles north of the Chimney Hollow site. They were actually in the mandatory evacuation zone. They got a mandatory evacuation on July 29th and had to stay out of the area for 7 days. So that was unfortunate for the project that, 7 days when
all work ceased to work on the project. So obviously they'll get 7 extra days at the end of the project to complete it. It actually, I mean, the dam site itself wasn't ever in danger because it's pretty well stripped. The fire wouldn't have hurt it, but you couldn't, you wouldn't have been able to get in and out of the area. The emergency personnel wouldn't have been able to come through there if need be. Luckily, the fire stayed north of Highway 34 and Big Thompson River, so that was really good. So, yeah, they got back after a week. They got back in, and they're back working full shifts now.
I was definitely thinking about them that day when I saw the evacuation and that they were in the zone.
Yeah.
There's 300 people out at the site every day, right? I mean,
Exactly.
It's a traffic jam, I suppose.
And
Trying to evacuate
fuel
the site,
trucks
so,
coming in,
Yeah.
and everybody driving in and out.
Yeah.
The biggest is people, that many people coming in and out,
Yeah.
on top of everything else was going
It
on.
was,
Everybody was going in trying to get animals with pickups and
Yeah.
trailers, and I guess the evacuation day, the road was crazy up there.
They have to keep a skeleton crew of some variety. I'm sure they have a security plan. I'm not privy to, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what their security,
Sure.
if they had any security there at all. It's hard to say. It'd be interesting to know. But yeah, so that was unfortunate. But work is now progressing. Just real quickly, the upstream on the outlet tunnel, the upstream part of the tunnel, upstream half of the tunnel, similar to Button Rock, where the upstream, the main pipe is downstream is, you're looking at it right there, you can see the pipe inside the tunnel. Upstream, it's just a big tunnel. And the valve chamber, main huge valve chamber in the middle of the tunnel. So that upstream tunnel backfill is about done. It's got maybe 5 more weeks and then it'll be done, which is really good because as soon as that's all done, then they can start on the outlet tower. The outlet tower is probably, of course, that's a nearly 400-foot tall structure. That's one of the real critical items on the construction of the reservoir. And they'll be starting and going up with that outlet tower about the end of September. And it will take about a year to finish that probably. Grouting's been completed on the left abutment, and hopefully within a few weeks it'll be done on the entire dam site. The last spillway slab was poured towards the end of last month, so the spillway is essentially completed, which is good. In the valve house, the plunger valve, the main valve that controls the entire project, has now been installed. If you recall, that's the one they were kind of holding hostage in Germany. And the crane for that facility has been installed. So the valve house is coming along well. And they're preparing for a Carter Lake interconnect. This pipeline is going to then interconnect with Carter Lake, the pressure conduit that goes from Flatiron Pump Station up to Carter Lake. That actually puts the water into Carter Lake. This will connect to that, allowing a couple different things. One is allow water to be delivered directly to Carter when Carter's down and Chimney Hollow's up. You can deliver directly, and also as an emergency if something happens at the Flatiron pumping the power plant or the pump. It provides a secondary way of getting water into Carter Lake, which is good for us. The main dam is now about 250 foot tall, and the saddle dam is about 20 feet tall. It just started not too long ago, but the saddle dam shouldn't take too long. It did get shut down. Had to redo some air permits with the state of Colorado, but so it's about 4 weeks behind schedule, but going well. This is where we are right now, the progression of the that, Dale. I apologize for how small that is. And in terms of change orders, we're still within budget on change orders. We have 2 reasonably large change orders this last month. Concrete cuts on the plinth, the main foundation of the dam, as well as post-weld heat treatment on the field wells. They weren't working, the field wells weren't working like they had hoped, so they have to basically heat up the pipe and the weld and then let it all cool together. They were having some stress issues with the field problems. This is the overall project cost to date. 507 was what was originally contract amount. Change orders of 57 million today, so we're at 565. But they've earned 411 million, so earned about 72% of the project. So that is good. 3 years, and about what you expect for 3 of the 4. We just, last week hit a 3-year anniversary of construction. So we're 3 of the 4 years, about 75% of the calendar, and we've done about 72% of the work. So,
what's the completion date on the graph?
August of 25. So we're 1 year away from construction completion, and so we're still
On target?
still on target for getting it completed by August of 25 next year. So anyway, that's kind of where we are. Nice not to report anything big other than a shutdown for a fire.
Other than that, no significant issues, everything's progressing along all right?
Nope, yeah, progressing very well. And of course, once a week, Northern does have a tour, so if anybody's interested, any board members are interested, you certainly could sign up for any one of those and go. And they've all filled up. There's a lot of interest in the project, so. Anyway, no questions?
Any questions
Go
for?
ahead.
Yeah? Sounds like basically good news.
Yes, so far.
Yeah.
And like I say, if you go up Pole Hill Road, the backside of Carter, you can see it. It's right there. You don't even have to go on a tour, you just drive by there any day.
So when they shut off the Carter Lake, that pipeline to the power plant in Carter, they'll have to actually shut down power, right? Generation too?
No, they have to shut, to tie in,
Yeah, to the tie-in.
they have to shut down the pump, the force main pump from Flatiron Power Plant up to Carter Lake. So we won't be able to deliver for a month. We'll not be able to deliver any water into Carter Lake. But the main penstock that goes to the power plant and then up to Horsetooth will still be operational. So we won't be able to pull the full 550 CFS because you can't, I don't think you can get that much up to Horsetooth. It's whatever the capacity of the Hanson feeder canal will be all they can run, plus what they deliver to Big Thompson. But yeah, the power plant and the penstock, last year, late last year, early this year, there was a shutdown of the penstock to tie in the pipeline that goes from Pole Hill, the penstock down to the valve house. But once that was in and the valves were put in there, then they turned that back on. So that can be run independent of water to Jimmy Hall.
Yes, Mr. Plumbing up there.
Thanks, Ken. Your project listing, I don't know if you got those available.
Yep.
It's on the list.
page this one.
It's on 15, right? Sure. Looks like we have people coming in, maybe.
Any comments on this schedule?
There's this morning, is Northern Water coming in and,
We're gonna have to contact, we have it as a tentative, but we're
Okay.
gonna have to reach out to them now that they've had to redirect some of the
Yeah.
resources for the fire, so.
because it looked like we had St. Brandon left-hand and left-hand watershed all. two.
Yeah, so I
Seems like a
suspect
busy-
some of
A busy agenda
Might
for
be
guests.
Any comments or questions? Okay, thanks. Any other informational items?
Nope, they were in the packet.
Okay, all right. And you can see items scheduled for future board meetings. Again, as we decided on cash and lieu, we'll just quarterly look at that. And now, I doubt that what we decided as far as changing the cash and lieu amount, has that gone to city council yet?
That's scheduled for their first meeting in October. We try to keep it 3 months out from the event.
Yeah,
And October's early enough because, if you recall, we set it up to change actually on
Yeah.
January 1st. So that'll give council 3 months.
well, and give the contractors or enough notice on, here's what's coming and here's when it's gonna, the date you're gonna see it on, so. I mean, just looking at the years, probably looking into next year, if we wanna do an adjustment on it at all, probably ought to look at sometime in the summer early to decide, do we change it or don't we change it, and then, I think it's a good schedule. I think the people we've been kind of messing around when we're gonna change it, it's all laid out, probably, I think it'll work well. I don't know if you've gotten comments at all from anybody that.
Yeah, I think that's the general feeling of the people that we've been talking with. They've been appreciative that if it comes to pass, that that's what council decides, that they would have time to plan accordingly, and to know that it might be set for greater than just maybe a 3-month window, so they can do some of their financials for, expect that to be staying the same for a year, so. It's
Yeah.
been good feedback.
Yeah, and know that it's an annual event. I mean, once it kicks in, it's the first of the year. They won't hear much from us until we decide to do something the following year, so. No, I think it's a good plan,
Agreed.
much better. Any discussion on future water board agendas? No, I'm sorry, but I don't know how I met you. You are
Diane Christ, Councilwoman Christ.
Are you here kind of on Marcia's behalf, or?
Well, the feeling was that we could fill in where she's, where she's not able to attend, so that we at least stay connected. So right now, Councilor McCoy is doing airport, and I'm dropping in for water board, which I had told Marcia to begin with that I would try to second her whenever she needed, so here I am.
Nice to have you here.
Thanks.
It's a much better draw than airport.
Okay.
What are you saying?
It's a much better draw to come here than to go to airport. I mean,
I think so
it's
too.
obvious. This is a great board.
We're cool.
And then they're kind of related, aren't they? Especially when there's a fire.
Yeah, true.
That was our maximal overlap, I think.
When there's a fire, we really like those airport guys.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments for the good of the cause? Not, we'll adjourn.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.